I know this is from a few years ago, but it's still something that people talk about. Judy Murray tweeting, It's not fair at all. Protect women's sport. Listen to the facts, the scientists and the medics. This is wrong. You look at Twitter, in light of your recent win, there are people saying things like Hailey Davision is destroying women's sport. What's your message to them and the impact their words and rhetoric is having on your life?
Yeah, the one I always find interesting is people with daughters. Because, from my outlook, when you're a parent, the one thing you should be telling your kids is, go out there, you can conquer the world. You can take on whoever. I've got a half-sister, and when she was growing up, my parents were telling her that. They weren't going, no, you see that man down the road, you'll never be as good as him, but try as good as you can. I always find it interesting when people with daughters are, oh, you're ruining my daughter's life. And it's like, well, why aren't you telling your daughter she can go conquer the world?
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So we have some good news in the fight for women's golf. We've followed transgender golfer Hailey Davision for a while now. Hailey has been allowed to compete in women's competitions. We had some victory when it came to Florida, a particular tournament in Florida that eventually banned Hailey. That was the NXXT tournament in Florida that Hailey actually won, and a lot of attention was drawn to the story because essentially a man had won a women's golfing competition. They eventually banned transgender athletes from competing in that tournament. They changed their policy to say that you had to be a biological female at birth in order to participate. They said, as we navigate through the evolving landscape of sports, it is crucial to uphold the competitive integrity that is the cornerstone of women's sports. Our revised policy is a reflection of our unwavering commitment to celebrating and protecting the achievements and opportunities of female athletes. Protected categories are a fundamental aspect of sports at all levels, and it is essential for our tour to uphold these categories for biological females, ensuring a level playing field. That was wonderful news, and many were hoping that the LPGA would follow suit. As it stood, their policy said that if you transitioned to a female and had undergone gender reassignment surgery, you could participate in women's golf despite being male. Now, some would argue that they have the strictest of policies, so it makes it okay. But we know better. We know that somebody who is born male, who goes through male puberty, who has been on estrogen or whatever and suppressed their testosterone, still has testosterone levels way above the average female athlete. We know that going through gender reassignment surgery doesn't make the person a female. And there were many female golfers who spoke, some anonymously, saying that they've seen this person in action and it's as clear as day that they have an advantage over the female golfers. And there's been videos of this person competing, and people who know about golf have said that they see a clear difference. But for some reason, the LPGA still allowed male athletes to compete in women's competitions, despite the L in LPGA standing for ladies. This is specifically a women's golfing competition, a very elite level of golf that Hailey hoped to be a part of one day and came quite close to doing so recently. So the LPGA have changed their policy, and that is wonderful news. And it essentially bans Hailey from competing at this level. It's a fact that Hailey has taken the place of many a female golfer. When we see Hailey competing in a women's competition, that is in place of a woman, and that is just unacceptable. So it's good to hear that there has been a change in policy. However, it's not perfect, and we're going to get into that. So we have female golfer Olivia Schmidt, who just last week urged the LPGA to rethink their policy to protect the integrity of women's golf, of ladies' golf.
I think that when you have a big organization that only protects one person compared to 400 others, it says a lot about who they are and how they handle themselves. If it weren't for sports or being an athlete, I never would have learned how to show up on time, finish work on time, do anything. So I'm really grateful for that, and the blessings it's given me along the way has just been even greater. A lot of time and energy goes into this, a lot of practice, a lot of time away from my family, that if I just had like a normal desk job, I could go and hang out with them every night, or time that I could have meeting people and, building a family of my own. But I've given a lot of that up. That's probably the biggest sacrifice, is just realizing that it's all going to be for something one day. I want my kids one day to chase their dreams and not have to have these distractions in their way. I'm just praying that it gets changed. I'm praying that we can find a way to kind of find some common ground in that. And hopefully for the next generation of golfers, all I can hope is that I had a part in that and a part in history in this way.
Urging the LPGA to think about the next generation of golfers. We don't want our daughters to have to deal with this. The young female athletes coming next who are going to get into golf, who are going to excel at golf. We don't want them to have to deal with this. It has to come to an end. The Riley Gaines posted the following. Breaking. LPGA has updated their gender eligibility requirements to ban men from women's golf. They said the effects of male puberty confer competitive advantages in golf performance compared to players who have not undergone male puberty. The L in LPGA means something again. Turning Point said, a big win for common sense. So the LPGA's press release said the following. The LPGA has updated its gender policy for competition eligibility, effective starting with the 2025 season. The policy, informed by a working group of top experts in medicine, science, sport, physiology, golf performance, and gender policy law, was developed with input from a broad array of stakeholders and prioritizes the competitive integrity of women's professional tournaments and elite amateur competitors. This working group has advised that the effects of male puberty confer competitive advantages in golf performance compared to players who have not undergone male puberty. Accordingly, under the new policy, athletes who are assigned female at birth are eligible to compete on the LPGA Tour, Epson Tour, Ladies European Tour, and in all other elite LPGA competitions. First of all, not too keen on the language. What the heck is being assigned female at birth? You're either born male or female. Some people will read that and misinterpret it because of the language that's been used. Technically, Iman Khalif was assigned female at birth. Iman is not transgender. I'm not saying Iman is transgender, but Iman is male. But yet has documentation that says that Iman is female. So again, not too keen on the language. Players assigned male at birth and who have gone through male puberty are not eligible to compete in the aforementioned events. The policies governing the LPGA's recreational programs and non-elite events utilize different criteria to provide opportunities for participation in the broader LPGA community. Golf offers opportunities for all athletes to compete at professional and elite amateur levels. Individual competitions are generally categorized as women's events, which has specific eligibility requirements, or open events, where any player, regardless of sex, is eligible to compete. Well, there you go. Transgender athletes can compete in the open competition. Our policy is reflective of an extensive science-based and inclusive approach, said LPGA Commissioner Molly McHugh-Samaan. The policy represents our continued commitment to ensuring that all feel welcome within our organisation, while preserving the fairness and competitive equity of our elite competitions. So this essentially bans trans golfer Hailey Davision from competing in LPGA competitions. The USGA has also introduced a similar policy, and it's all about being born male or female and whether or not you have gone through male puberty. So as well as the LPGA, the USGA has acted similarly, introducing a new competitive fairness gender policy that outlines the same stipulation. The update means that Davidson will not be able to pursue a career on the Epson Tour despite earning her status for 2025 on the developmental circuit following the T95 in October's second stage of the LPGA Q Series. So after Davidson reached the second stage of the LPGA Q Series in October, that's when it was announced that the LPGA are reviewing their policy. And people were awaiting the policy update. Were they going to change the policy or just make it stricter to appease people? Or were they going to ban male golfers from competing in the LPGA Tour altogether? So after they announced that they were reviewing the policy, Hailey said the following on Instagram. Hailey always uses the wrong dare. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, since if the LPGA changes their policy at the start of 2025, any and all status I just earned will be taken away. Hailey also claimed to need security at these events, saying thank you to anyone who showed support this week, on and off the course, especially the security personnel I had with me at all times, while at the course, due to all the extreme hate and threats. Well, that is now something Hailey does not need to worry about anymore, since Hailey is not going to be competing on the Epson Tour. So the updates made by the USGA and the changes to their policy means that Davidson will no longer be able to try and qualify for the US Women's Open, which falls under its remit. So the USGA said that current scientific and medical research shows that sports performance differences exist between biological sexes, and such differences begin or occur during the onset of puberty. Another female golfer to speak out in the run-up to the changes in policy was Amy Olsen. She said that the LPGA founder's work is being hijacked by transgender golfers. So Amy, who retired just this year, and I hope that had nothing to do with Hailey Davision and the likes of such entering into the sport. She said the issue is really on people's minds now because it's right in front of us. But it's been there for 13 years. Since we changed our policy, we want it to be female at birth. End of story. If you're born female, you're a female. If you're born a male, you're a male. I do believe that the LPGA has heard us. I'm not sure if they'll have the courage to go that far, but I know they update their rules in December, and so I'm really hoping that we have something to celebrate here in the next couple of weeks. And thankfully we do have something to celebrate. Now this policy isn't perfect, and I think you can guess why, because it pushes the lie that if you transition before puberty, which is absolutely tragic in my opinion, that somehow it's still fair for such people to compete in women's competitions. Now we have heard of male athletes competing in women's sports who did transition before puberty, and there's still evidence that they have an advantage. And you know what? I always say, whether or not you can demonstrate that this person has an advantage over the female athletes, it doesn't matter. If you are male, you do not belong in women's competitions. So when these sporting bodies talk about whether or not the person has gone through male puberty, it's like they're normalizing the concept of a child being put on puberty blockers. And all it does is reinforce the idea of the earlier, the better. The earlier we begin transitioning, the better for the child. They can participate in sports. They can be passing. So I don't like that whole concept. And there are actually studies that show that they still have an advantage.
Okay, you've got two competing goals in sports, right? One is inclusion, which everybody can understand and get on board with. However, the second goal that's in direct opposition with inclusion in this instance is going to be a fair competition. And if that's your priority, if your overriding priority is going to be fairness over inclusion, you got to turn to the data. And the data irrefutably shows that biological males are 10 to 30% stronger, faster, have better endurance, better aerobic capacity across the board.
Even if, like this child who went through the puberty blockers and takes estrogen, has been doing that since elementary school.
Again, if we defer to the studies, and I sent several to your producers, which maybe they can put on the homepage, they show that even on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, the decrease in physical performance is, quote, trivial. That's what the data says. And to give you an example, if you look at a biological male, transgender female, with grip strength in conjunction with a biological female transgender male, okay, so both of them are on blockers and cross-sex hormones. The transgender female, the biological male's grip strength was 17% greater than the female on testosterone and puberty blockers.
Yeah, and this, when you talk about contact sports, you talk about safety, you talk about volleyball, you talk about soccer. I mean, this is out of control.
So Seth asked, but does that mean they'll allow men who started transitioning before puberty? Riley responded yes. Less than satisfactory, as it implies kids under 12 years old could or should inject themselves with unnatural and harmful chemicals. It's a direction most sport governing bodies have gone. It's a bold first step in prioritising fairness over inclusion, so we keep the pressure on. Now, I think there are a number of reasons why they say as long as the person hasn't transitioned before puberty. Number one, it's a way to play it safe. So they still want to act like they buy into the idea that one can change their sex or one can change their gender. But if you've gone through male puberty, that means you have advantages, because it is irrefutable. Being on medications as a kid and not going through male puberty doesn't make the person female. But as of now, Hailey is banned, and I think that's what they were going for. They just wanted to ban transgender players from competing in women's golf. And this policy does achieve that. And I do commend the LPGA for taking this stand, for updating their policy to ensure the integrity of women's golf. Because you are called the LPGA. That has to count for something. They were called the LPGA for a reason, because this is specifically for female golfers. So let me know what you think. Are you satisfied with the change in policy? Or are you still fed up with the whole male puberty stipulation? Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.